Welcome to The Romantic Side of Suspense with Sarah Hamaker. In each episode, she'll talk with your favorite romantic suspense authors. They will take you behind the scenes of the writing process, giving excerpts from their writing, and share stories about their writing life.
Hello, and welcome to The Romantic Side of Suspense. I'm your host, Sarah Hamaker, and I'm so glad you joined me. This episode, you're going to hear about this month's new releases in Christian romantic suspense. I hope you will enjoy hearing from your favorite romantic suspense authors as they talk about the background of their latest books.
Hi, and next up we have Kate Angelo, and she's going to be talking about her Christmas romantic suspense novella, Deadly Holiday Hijack. So welcome to my show, Kate.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back.
Yes, we're going to talk about the holiday that gets hijacked. I love that. Alliteration.
Yeah, this is a fun book.
So first, we're going to talk about your heroine. Does she have a pet? And if she wanted a pet, what would it be, and what would you call it?
Yeah, so Deadly Holiday Hijack is a novella in the Christmas in the Crosshairs collection. It's a anthology from the Elite Guardians. And when we wrote the original series, our publisher asked us to hold back their weddings and their engagements so that we could do a Christmas novella where these things happen. And so my heroine has a pet, kind of, which is one of the main characters, I guess, in Driving Force, which is Boss. And he is a retired military working dog. And so I had hinted a little bit, and it doesn't happen in this book, but if she could have a pet, she would want to have another Belgian Malinois just like Boss. And I'm not sure what she would name him, maybe like El Jefe or something, so that it would be like another variation on Boss's name. But definitely kind of hints around about having, another, like they might need another dog to bring into their life. So Boss is in Christmas in the Crosshairs Deadly Holiday Hijack, and he's also in Driving Force. And I say he's one of the main characters because people told me that he's is one of their favorite characters in the book, and it's a dog. So
yeah,
that's
good. Yeah, people love their dogs. So
yes, they do.
What's your hero's greatest fear in this story?
So the hero's greatest fear in this story is that he had a surgery that was experimental and would hopefully give him the ability to walk again because he's in a wheelchair. And his greatest fear is really that even though Christina has said she would marry him and that she loves him and that they've been together, that maybe because the surgery hasn't worked, that she hasn't set a date for their wedding, and that maybe it's because he can't walk. And so they haven't really talked about it, and he's afraid to broach it because he really doesn't want to uncover it in case that's true, and then they have to really dig through all of that. And so really his greatest fear is that she won't want to marry him because he still can't walk.
Yeah. Way to create that tension. Very good. So, let's talk about your villain in this story. Who or what does your villain love the most?
So the villain in this story, he really loves power, and he loves himself. He takes over the church and holds everyone hostage and demands that the government does what he wants. And so they're having a Christmas pageant, and then this guy takes over the whole church, and really it's because of his own narcissistic views and what he wants. And then he has some underlying motives, but really it's, he just loves himself and loves power, and his power got corrupted along the way, and so now he wants to get the upper hand again, and this is how he does it.
Yeah. So it sounds like this one of your settings is in a church, but is there another challenge you had to writing the book within this particular setting?
So the whole thing does take place in the church, and the big challenge is that describing a church, if you've ever been into, this is like a mega church, and so trying to describe it with all the, how they can be circular, and you can kind of run from one place to another in a big circle, because the hallways tend to connect back. And so describing it was one thing, but also just keeping, like, there wasn't a lot of room for them to go. And in this book, I think also my biggest challenge was trying to make sure that I didn't cause fear for anyone who goes to church, that, and that really was something that was like on my mind, is like, if I write about something like this, it's a little over the top, I think, but if I write about this, is anyone ever going to have a fear like that someone could take over the church and bring in a bunch of mercenaries and lock everybody down? And so I think that was one of the challenges, is making sure that I was handling it in a way that that made sure that we showed that there was lots of security on site as it was, and then definitely some people coming to help, coming to rescue.
And so so why did you decide that this was the story you needed to tell? What was the genesis behind this particular tale?
Yeah, this one kind of started with, we had some fun discussions about it, but honestly it was the church that we were attending has a lot of security, and it's a mega church. They have multiple services with thousands of people in every service, and so there's lots of security. And I saw one of the security guys walking by, and he was a little bit older, and what you would think would be like able to take down, a mercenary, trained tactical mercenary, and so it was like, what would happen if something happened in this church, and all these people were here, and they only had a few people who were doing security? Like, what could happen? And so that's when I really got that idea, and then and they've kind of called it like Die Hard in a Church, the movie, except for not exactly that, but it is like, a Christmas pageant, and then it gets taken over, and everybody gets trapped inside the church, and the whole thing is live streamed. So it's kind of like a little hometown version of a Die Hard Christmas movie.
But no Bruce Willis.
No Bruce Willis, no bad words, and it's definitely more PG rated, yeah.
Good. Whew, we're all relieved about that. So let's end our discussion on Deadly Holiday Hijack by you sharing one thing that you want readers to know about this particular novella.
Well, I think that you're really going to love it. Is just fast-paced action, and it introduces two characters that will be in the next series, the next book that is coming out in the spring of 2024, which will be another Elite Guardian series where we get to see some new Elite Guardians in a new city, and they have a whole new set of issues and problems and a whole new team dynamic and everything. And so it'll kind of build into that book that comes out next year. So it's a fun read, and I love Christmas stories. So I think you'll really like it.
Yeah, Christmas novellas, they're definitely fun to write. So thanks for sharing about yours today, Kate.
Yeah, thank you so much. And you can get more information about it on my website at kateangelo.com.
And you can find that information in our notes for this podcast, I think. So 2 places to find it. Yes, you're welcome.
Great.
And now we're going to talk with Carrie Trumbo with her latest romantic suspense, Deadly Yellowstone Secret. So welcome to my show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we're going to start with your heroine, and what did she want to be when she grew up, and did she actually become that person?
Yes, actually, she wanted to be a naturalist. She wanted to work out in the wild and basically have a science job, a STEM job, and use her brain. She's very, very proud of the fact that she's a smart woman and a wilderness woman, and that is exactly what she became. She is a naturalist in Yellowstone National Park.
Ah, cool. I love it when we can give our characters that sense of fulfillment, although sometimes we want them not to do what they wanted to do because it adds to the story. But good for her. So let's switch over to your hero, and while we have strong, manly men, sometimes they have fears. So what is your hero's greatest fear?
My hero's greatest fear is that he will read people wrong, that he will accept someone as a friend or as a partner, and that he will have gotten it wrong, that he won't know them as well as he thought he did.
Ah, okay. Yeah, I can just see some of the conflict forming before our eyes here. And then let's switch to our villains, our bad guys, our bad gals. Who or what does your villain love the most?
My villain loves his mom, broadly his family, but mostly his mom. He would probably do anything for her. He is a poacher. Won't go into total backstory because that would give away the climax, but he does all of this for fame and for success and for money, for endorsements, and in his mind that means that he can take care of his mom.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, it's admirable to want to take care of our mothers, but probably shouldn't break the law to do it. Just put it out there. Put it out there. Probably not. So let's talk about the challenges of writing this particular story in this particular setting. Now, I'm going to go out on a limb here, Carrie, and say that this is set in Yellowstone.
You are correct. The challenge there is that I've never actually been there.
Oh.
I want to go. It's on my bucket list, but I have not been to Yellowstone. So I did a lot of watching of videos, reading blogs, especially of former rangers. I have a couple of friends who live in Yellowstone and who actually her husband works in Yellowstone year-round, and she was instrumental in writing this story because anytime I didn't know how a situation would play out or exactly where it should take place, I would call up my friend Peg, and she would talk it through with me and describe the whole scene and give me street names and everything. So that adds an authenticity that I couldn't have had on my own.
Yeah, I love it. I love it when we can phone a friend. But hopefully you'll get there one day. One day.
I want to, really bad.
Especially after writing this story, I'm sure. Yeah. So let's talk about kind of what was the genesis of the story? What got you started on this story?
Okay, well, the story is the beginning scene is our heroine, Pamela. She is following this bear. This particular bear is very famous in Yellowstone, in the story in Yellowstone, for having multiple offspring at a time, and she's just this really, really famous bear, and so Pamela is studying this bear. And in real life, in my real life, there is a real bear like that does not live in Yellowstone. And I talk about it there's a little letter in the back of the book that talks about the bear is called Mama, and there's a number, and I cannot remember the number off the top of my head. But she is in the same region as Yellowstone, but not in Yellowstone Park. She's in Wyoming.
Okay.
And she's a very prolific mama bear, and she's one of the most photographed bears ever. Her story is just amazing, and you can find out more about her online. I think you can just type in Mama Bear, and you probably will get information on her.
Yeah, and I love it how we can use real real life stories to color our fiction stories. So we're almost out of time, Carrie. So what is one thing you want readers to know about Deadly Yellowstone Secrets?
That it is really a book of my heart. I enjoyed writing every bit of it, and I'm excited for people to read it, and I hope that they love it as much as I do.
That's great. Well, you heard it from the author. You're going to love this book. So thanks for being on my show, Carrie.
Thank you.
And now we're talking with Robin Patton and her latest romantic suspense, Running to You. So welcome to my show, Robin.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So we're going to start with your heroine, and I love that you picked this question because I think it's just so much fun. What does she eat for breakfast?
So this is a funny question for my heroine because she has amnesia. And so she doesn't remember anything for 5 years. So before 5 years ago, she used to eat this big breakfast. And so she shows up at the hero's house, and of course it's a long story. It's a whole book. But the next morning they make this big breakfast, and she is sort of nibbling on her food, and she's hungry. So she asks real timidly, "Can I have some more?" And they're like, yeah, like, why are you asking? And she has this almost visceral, like, fear of asking for more food, but she doesn't know where it comes from. So it's so interesting. So she's starving, but she's afraid to eat because of something that she doesn't really understand, which that was fun to write because I had no idea why she was afraid to eat, but I just thought it would be a fun scene.
No, that's great, and especially when, like you said in your book, where she has amnesia and she didn't know why she was that tentative. So, let's switch to your hero. So, what's his greatest fear?
So my hero's greatest fear is rejection, and that kind of stems back from when he was a kid because from his brother, there was this whole dark moment story. But it's very interesting because he, Eliza, the heroine, rejected him. She broke up with him. Now, in her defense, it was kind of his fault. He was being a jerk. But she just took off. So when she shows back up, he's like, I'm not going through this again. I've been here and done this before, and she left me. But she doesn't remember that. She thinks they're still together. But that's his biggest fear. In fact, he has spent the last 5 years just making a lot of money. And he's like, you know what? Money is always the right size. It's always the right color, and it never rejects me.
That is sort of so true, Robin.
Yes, it's true. It also doesn't love us back, so that's the problem.
Right. It's small problem there.
Exactly.
So let's talk about your villain, since we're on the subject of love. Who or what does your villain love the most in this book?
Oh, he loves himself. He is a total megalomaniac narcissist. He's got sort of a messiah complex, and so he thinks that he is the most special human being in the world. And he takes advantage of all these women, but he really truly believes that he's helping them. And even if he's not, it doesn't matter because it's all about him. And he's like a little bit nuts. But he doesn't. There's nothing in the world that he loves more than himself.
Well, and that will get you into trouble more times than than we can write about. Really.
That's exactly right.
So let's talk about the setting. It sounds like you set it in a fictitious place because that's one of the questions you picked. So why did you base it? What did you base your setting on?
Yeah, so I'm from New England, and I've been writing stories that take place in New Hampshire for years, but I went with my sister to Maine last year, and we were on in a Gunquit, which is this little town kind of in the southern part of Maine, and we went to a Gunquit, and I was like, this is the cutest place. I was taking pictures everywhere, and I was like, I have got to set a story in a place like this. So it's not really that far down the coast. The place that my fictitious place is farther up, closer to Portland. So because I wanted it to be a little bit more rural, and but yeah, the place was just so charming. And, of course, Maine has that really rocky coastline that's just very jagged and in and out. So there's lots of little secret places that you can go up to, to a certain place in a certain cove, and no one can see you because it's so rocky and the rocks are going in and out of the coast. I don't know how to describe that better. But so I just thought, all sorts of bad things can happen on a coastline like this. Yeah. So that was my thought, and I couldn't wait then once I had been there to this little, there's a little actual cove, real cove called Perkins Cove. It's in Agunquit, and I thought, I'm going to just make my little town look just like that.
I love it. Yeah. And then you can revisit it in your mind as you're writing, and that's almost as good as being there.
I know. Or actually visit it, which I would also like to do. Go back.
Yes, of course, of course.
Yeah.
So what about the genesis of this story? Where did this idea for Running to You come from?
I don't know how you get your stories, but sometimes I just will have an image in my head. And so the image that I got in my head was a woman knocks on a man's door in the middle of the night and throws herself in his arms as if they're together, and they're not. And so I had no idea what that was going to look like. But that's how the story starts. She just sort of shows up at his door and then acts like, oh, thank God I found you. And he's like, why are you hugging me? Because they haven't seen each other for 5 years. So that was just that image. And then, of course, when that happens, then you've got to figure out all the details that go around to make that one image work. I wanted that image. Dang it, I was going to find a way to make it work. So that's where...
I've had that happen before as well. So it's always fun when it actually works out and you can use it.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't always. Some of the images are just not possible.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't always, but sometimes that's the idea that gives us to the book. So it's all good. Right.
Exactly.
So we're going to close our short time together with what's one thing you want readers to know about Running to You?
Well, I had never written an amnesia story before, and that's not always a trope that I love to read, but it was a blast to write. And so anyway, it's got amnesia, and it has second chance romance, which that is one of my favorite tropes, because it can be hard to make two people fall in love in a romantic suspense because they have to happen pretty fast. Like, they're not going to be 6-month books for the most part. And then there's also a little secret baby. So I just love those tropes, and it's been fun. It was fun trying to make them all work together. So.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for sharing on my show today.
Well, thanks for having me.
And we're going to talk with Paige Edwards now about her new romantic suspense book, Skyfall. So welcome to my show, Paige.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here, Sarah.
Well, we are going to get started with the heroine like we always do. I'll have to have ladies first. Why did you pick this particular name for your heroine? And please tell us what it is.
Okay, her name is Isla Montjoy. She's British. She's an English nurse. And the name Isla is very common over in the UK. And I needed a very common name for her because of things that transpire during the story. When the story opens, she has a police officer boyfriend, and she needs to get away from him.
Oh, that does sound like maybe a common name would be good. Now, my maiden name was Smith, and I was very glad to get rid of it, but it sure came in handy when one wanted to be anonymous.
There you go. Exactly what this is all about.
Right. So let's switch to your hero. Now, we do like our men to be men, but sometimes they have fears like we all do. So what is your hero's greatest fear?
Ben's greatest fear is his father started a multi-million-dollar construction company that builds hospitals and strip malls and things. And right before his father retires, he and his dad are on a climbing trip, and he gets a phone call that someone has embezzled millions of dollars out of their accounts. And he is just devastated because he's the oldest son, and he is like Mr. Super responsible, and now it looks like his father won't be able to retire.
Oh, yeah. And that brings us to the villain, whether that's the villain in which story you're going to be in, because remember your heroine is trying to be anonymous here. So who or what does your villain love the most? Because that's a great motivation.
Yeah, well, we have two villains in this story, which is really fun, and they interconnect. So I've got two stories going on, but they do weave together. But the main villain is a dirty cop in the UK. He's in England, and he feels kind of like there's no issue that he has with going after some of these people who get off through loopholes by exercising loopholes in the law.
So he that's always a good motivation, I think. And so you mentioned the UK. So let's talk about the setting. Is it set in the UK?
Yeah, it starts there, and then to evade this dirty cop, she actually takes a job in Virginia. Ben's family is just over in Scotland climbing, and so they have a run-in, and she ends up taking a job over in Virginia to care for his father, who has an accident.
Oh. Okay. And why did you choose to have kind of an international story setting?
I am half Scottish, so we visit the UK annually, and I just love the country so much, and I wanted people to know more about its culture and its people, and yet just kind of let them see, people from the UK as not just a great place to go visit for vacation, but understand them a little bit more.
Ah, yeah. It's always good. I love the way we can use what we know in our stories. So let's talk about the genesis for the story. What gave you what was the idea behind this? What gave you the idea behind this story?
It was kind of two-pronged, actually. My daughter had suffered some severe trauma, and the heroine in the story, she suffers some pretty severe trauma at the beginning, and how she works through it brings in a lot of Christian elements in the story. And also some people at my church congregation, they go climbing all the time, mountain climbing. And I thought, that would be fun. So let's see what I can do with these two things. So.
Oh, I love that, Paige, because I think it's always fascinating how we come up with ideas for our stories. So thank you for sharing that. Let's close our short time together let's give our readers kind of a tantalizing taste of your book. So what is Skyfall's tagline?
Okay, it's a young British nurse flees the country after she uncovers her boyfriend's secret.
Oh, now that's very intriguing. So listeners and readers, Skyfall is probably the book for you if that sounds good to you. So thank you for being on my show, Paige.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Thanks for listening to The Romantic Side of Suspense with Sarah Hammaker. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. You can sign up to receive notifications of upcoming podcasts and listen to previous editions at sarahhammakerfiction.com.